And hello, everyone. I'm your host, Guy, with my co-host, as always, Ashley. How are we doing today, Ashley?
Another marvelous day. We're headed into like 10 days of rain up here in the Pacific Northwest, so that's always fun.
Oh, wow. Yeah, we got an unusual cold snap in Florida, which means we actually did see temperatures in the mid to upper 30s.
Oh, wow.
And yeah, it was funny because a lot of the parents were debating if school was going to get canceled. And I was like, it's sunny. Like, what?
Yeah.
Welcome to Florida, right? This is my first winter in Florida, so
yeah, that does not happen here because it rains a lot. Yes.
Yeah.
So I'm excited today, Guy,
go.
because we have one of our amazing board members. She's one of our longest standing board members, and a great friend of mine. I worked a lot with her with projects with the VFW in Texas, and
awesome.
She's just amazing.
Who is our guest today?
So our guest is Connie McNabb. Woohoo!
Yeah.
Here she is. She is one of our board members, like I said, and she's also an Air Force retiree. She retired as a one-star general. Woo. So we know her around the VFW as general, which she always says, no, there's no rank here. But it's hard. You can't forget the star. You just can't.
It's hard. I mean, that is an achievement.
Yes.
Whether you've been in service or not, right? If you think of being like senior executive, senior leadership, right? Like flag officer, getting that star, that's a big deal. That's appointed by, Connie, you can correct me, but appointed by Congress.
I'll go ahead and give you the caveat.
Yeah, please.
Yes, in the Air Force, 23 years. Was a colonel forever. I was one of those absolutely bulletproof, fearless colonels. All set for the 07, had the COE and the whole thing, but I got put into the chief of staff position for Texas Military Department. So that's the Guard in Texas. 20,000 troops, a $500 million budget, and there have been some misdeeds going on, and the governor fired the top 3 generals. Just cut everybody out.
See ya.
Cleaned house.
Well, yeah. Put in a whole new thing, and I was fat, dumb, and happy as the joint surgeon. And the next thing I knew, boom, I'm the chief of staff. And when you go into a job like that after that kind of thing, not all the evildoers are gone. And so my job, I was working for Governor Rick Perry, who's a great governor, a great supporter of the Guard, military guy. And I started cleaning house, and I kicked over a whole bunch of rice bowls. And, there were people who were misdirecting funds that were supposed to go for mental health and deployed families and yellow ribbon. And just suffice it to say, I don't really care. I'm going to clean house. I am not going to kowtow. Yeah, it'd be great if, all the COE and the star happens. That'd be great. Well, it came time, and we're getting close, and the evildoers know how to play games. They lobbed in a complaint. They knew exactly the timing. Since I was coming up for having a 1-star, that went to the DODIG that investigates all the 3 stars, 4 stars. So this colonel who's getting ready to put on a star is low priority. They investigated the complaint, and the week after my federal COE expired, DODIG came back and said the complaint was absolutely bogus. You handled the situation perfectly. Oh, well, too bad, but it's just timing. So Rick Perry, Governor Rick Perry, and General John Nichols, who was our tag then at the time, said, we still want Connie to have a star. So as long as I'm in Texas, I can wear it. So I don't.
Ain't that something?
When I'm with colleagues who are federally recognized GOs, I'm a junior officer to them. Though I was one of those colonels that everybody's like, oh no, here she comes. What are you going to do to me? I was in. They kicked me out for old age, but anyway. So thank you, Rick Perry, and it was just one of those. You took the bullets, because the evildoers' comments to me is you should have taken better care of yourself. That means turning a blind eye and letting them slither around in the shadows. And I just said, no, that's not the job I'm meant to do. I have a commander in chief. I have an obligation to the Air Force and to DOD and the Army. we're going to clean this thing up as best we could. So, thank you, Governor Perry. And as long as I'm in Texas, which is a big place, it's hard to get out of Texas. It's an 8 to 10 hour drive in most directions you go.
Yeah, it is.
I get to wear it. My retirement check from the Air Force says Colonel, and that is fine.
And that is, and ma'am and Guy, a lot of people don't realize there's all these little caveats in the military. People can be frocked, and your promotion is called a brevet promotion, right? Right. And these are terms that aren't, regularly understood. So thank you so much for clarifying that for our listeners.
As far as I'm concerned, like I said, in the VFW, we're all just colleagues, but like anything, even as I was a commander and, I promoted other people or as I got promoted, a promotion is a tool. It's not a reward. It's a tool. So you now have a job, but you need to have the tool. I wore the feathers off those eagles, I'll tell you. And
it's a really cool story too. So I've been watching TV series Jack Ryan, right? Fiction. Right. I don't know if any of y'all have seen Jack Ryan. Really good show, by the way. I enjoyed it. And I don't remember which season. It's a couple seasons in. And one of the senior CIA caseworkers looks at him and says, there's going to come a time in this job where you're going to have to compromise your values, your morals, because that's just how it works, because you're going to need people to help keep you moving up. And Ryan was like, I will never do that. No. Right. So the way the very last episode, sorry, spoiler, ends is he's going on vacation with his, I believe, fiance, might be wife. Don't quote me wrong on this. I might gotten it wrong. Chat, help me out. After you hit the like and subscribe, say Jack Ryan was blank with the lady, and let me know. Girlfriend, fiance, wife. Anyways, and they're like, well, when are you coming back off vacation? And he looks at the crew that's working at the CIA, and he's like, I don't know yet, not sure, because up through I think there was 5 seasons. He hadn't done anything to compromise his values. In fact, for part of one of the seasons, he actually got labeled as a traitor, an enemy to the U.S. because he wouldn't do misdealings with some of the corrupt individuals that were in the CIA. Again, fictional TV show. However, you did it in real life, and my guess is also, I'm kind of curious. At that senior level, right? Looking full bird, even general officer level, how many other females were there at the time you were in these ranks?
The Army, the Assistant Adjutant General for Army. So there's the Adjutant General, then there's Assistant Adjutant General Air and Army, and the Assistant Adjutant General for Army is a lady, Major General Joyce Stevens, who's an absolute leader to the bone. And so she was a great help. She also, as we wrangled through this whole thing, and great confidant, great friend. But bottom line, we got to do what's right. And she came in. She was one of the replacements. Like I said, they ripped off 3 generals, so she came in and went into the Army spot. So she was cleaning house too. And that's where we shared a lot of values. And General Nichols, who is the AG for Air, had been my wing commander. And so, I knew exactly where he was going. The man has got absolute titanium integrity. And, both of those people were a joy to work with in a very difficult environment. We got nasty grams from Guard Bureau and Air Force and DOD on a regular basis. Are you cleaning this up? Yes, we are. So, it's a lot of money. It's a lot of money.
Yeah. So Ashley, you can probably relate to that, right? Because what I hear Connie saying is she was basically like one of 2 females in a male-dominated work environment, right? For all my non-military, right? And she is doing the unpopular job of, in essence, coming in, getting rid of anyone who isn't, morally, ethically, legally, doing their job, right? Which is part of the oath that we all take. And she's doing it in a male-dominated world as a female, and she's doing it above reproach. Like, if there isn't some unseen elements,
oh man,
in that character, that's awesome. So Ashley, you probably have some parallels too, right? Being having been a female in service?
Well, it's interesting because it's super opposite ends of the spectrum. Because here's Connie coming in as a leader, and having to come in with all her leadership skills and having to just have that full confidence. I can imagine, ma'am, just, having full faith in what you're doing, because people are going to be those naysayers and not have faith in you, where you just have to have that full faith in yourself. Where I came in as a private, and I was one of 2 females in my company, or my platoon, I should say. There was 8 in my company, of 250. But I'm like this private who has to have that confidence of, I wasn't in a leadership position at all, but I had to have the confidence of not being taken advantage of. And still taking, so there are some parallels there that you still have to stand up for yourself, still have to have faith in what you're doing, but also I had to take the guidance from my leadership and trust that they were, leading me the right way.
As you go through the whole thing, it seems like I was this groundbreaking, and as far as military goes, but really I came in at age 37. I'm a veterinarian by trade. I specialized in racehorses. I was practicing at Churchill Downs 10 years.
Amazing stuff.
7 days a week, 14 hours a day, 365. And so joined the Air Force as a kind of a just change of pace. Let's put it that way. So having to go in, talk about a man's profession. I graduated from vet school in 1981. Probably none of you were born yet, but
2 years later.
I was.
Well, I was already a doc, but back then women veterinarians were not common. Women large animal veterinarians were not common, and women equine racetrack veterinarians were really not common. But this is what I was led to do. It's where I found, this is what really moved me. If you're going to go and work on racehorses, you might as well work on the good ones. And so, Churchill Downs is the place. So being able to go into a barn and, every single one of your patients is worth, the low end ones are $50,000 horses. The high end multi-million-dollar horses. And the trainers are looking at this girl that, I was, like I said, I was in my 30s, but when I came to Churchill, and then for the next 7 years there before I went in the Air Force, but I learned it's what I have here. Can I do the job? If you can't get past having a woman vet, then we aren't even going to have the conversation. But when you start doing good work and people start to see that the horses you're working on are winning races, and they're not. Sooner you kind of wear them down, and here and there, you pick your times, but there would be horses that I would see on some of these trainers that I wanted to work for. And, you kind of pick your time, you're going to say that, but I'd see them leading their horse back from a race that they had not won. And my comment would be, sorry you didn't win, but when you're ready to start winning at that horse, I'd really like to look at it. What?
See?
You be at the barn at 6 in the morning. Okay, I'll be there.
I love that.
Do what you say you're going to do. Don't overinflate your skills. Sometimes go in and look at them and go, oh, there's more here. So thank you very much. You don't owe me anything. And, but it's great to be in the barn. But, people respect the integrity that, if indeed you can help, you say so. If indeed you can't help, you don't blow a bunch of smoke. But people are putting a lot in your hands. It's a multi-million-dollar horse, and they have to explain to their owner, so here it's learning how to do that. But as you get successful and can make things happen, and you can stay away from the dark side, talk about some evildoers. There's a few of them slithering around.
I can only imagine that, ma'am, and how that's that unseen element that had to set you up for when you did join the military. And I don't want to leave your bio out because we touched on little parts of it, but I just love how we can kind of pick this apart, Guy, because with a little bit of what we've already been talking about. So Connie is a racehorse, performance horse veterinarian by trade. She was a solo ambulatory veterinarian starting as a farm vet in the mountains of Western North Carolina. And after a few years, moved to Kentucky to a base in 1983 at Churchill Downs in the surrounding area. And after 10 years of solo practice, so doing this on your own and growing, with burnout, with 14-hour days, 7 days a week, in a very dangerous business. I can only imagine, like you said, those tricky characters that in race horsing, horse racing.
Well, the horse
that's
dangerous too. They get in there quick, and there's nothing I do they like.
Oh, I can only imagine. And so she gets home and sees a postcard in her mailbox for Air Force health professionals. Are you ready for a change? And guess who was ready for a change? So the summer of 1990, a war was about to break out, and it looked like a safer job, and she was ready to explore her options as a veterinarian in the Air Force. And she just was the meanest captain to put on those bars, coming from the horse racing arena into the Air Force arena. Think about those unseen things leading into that.
I want to reframe that a little bit, Ashley. I don't know if I'd say the words mean, right? Like, from what I hear out of Connie, and what I think is interesting to explore and lead to my next question is there's a lot of character, right? There's a lot of, I don't know if Connie, you're familiar with like Brene Brown, right? Brene Brown, one of her quotes that I really enjoy is sometimes you have to be willing to speak truth to bull. I hope I can say that on the podcast. And her point is very simply, right? Like, approach people, like you said, Connie, with honesty and integrity. Tell them what you can do and tell them what you can't do. Ashley, it's very similar to what we were saying when we were talking about some of the couple stuff a few podcasts ago, where we were saying like, hey, like, we all wish our spouse could be a mind reader. They can't. So we have to verbalize our boundaries and our left and right limits. So what I'm curious about, Connie, is I think it's awesome the way you carry yourself, and your career speaks volumes for the way you've carried yourself. What's one of those really trying times where you really had to like dig in deep with your character, your morals, your values to really stand your ground? Maybe it was a really hard decision for you. I'm kind of curious about that. Where did that come in your career? Whether veterinarian, Air Force, doesn't matter. Maybe even marriage. I'm not sure.
Well, on the racetrack side, after I joined the Air Force, I didn't know what people did from 4:30 on Friday afternoon until 7 on Monday morning, because so after a summer of having weekends off and having been 7 days a week for so many times, I was starting to weave and crib. So I went to work for the Arizona Racing Commission. I was at Luke Air Force Base, and my wing commander said, as long as you're working for the good guys and no going out on emergency calls, Air Force first. I said, sure, no problem. So one day I was working at the track there in Phoenix. It was called Turf Paradise. And, I've been around the track for a while. I understand how to read the racing form and look at the horses. And here a horse came in. He was the favorite in the featured race. The last time he ran was about 4 months prior. He ran at Santa Anita for a graded stake. So, this is a high-end horse. And at that race, he was on the lead for half of the race. And then suddenly he slowed down and he came in last by 20 lengths. Ding, 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 ding. You think something happened. So here he came to Turf Paradise, which, Santa Anita to Turf Paradise, if you don't know horse racing, is it's a precipitous downgrade. But he was the favorite in the feature there. So that means a lot of people are betting on him, and they're simulcasting and everything else. That horse came into the paddock, and he had about a half a pound of bandages on one leg trying to support, what I had to assume was a tendon. And his eyes were all rolled up, and he's broken out in the lather. This horse is terrified. He knows, he knows this, what's going to happen. The horse is terrified. And looking at the form, I'm just like this. So I went over, looked at the horse, felt how much stuff was on the leg. And this is in the paddock. This is on TV and simulcast and everything. And I scratched the horse. I just said, he's out. And the owner of the track, came down to the paddock and called me everything but a Caucasian female. That's not the racetrack term. But it'd be nice.
Oh man, I can only imagine.
I'm doing this as a part-time job because I don't know what to do with myself on a Sunday. And he's paying me. I'm on his payroll, but I don't need the job. I'm in the Air Force. I don't need this job. I'm doing this because, I still got that racetrack thing going on. And he starts chewing me out in the paddock in front of the whole crowd and on TV. And I'm like, really? Really? Which, if you've ever been in my command, you've heard me say that, and it was seldom good. Really? And so I took my little radio. we had, what you call bricks, with the antenna. And I start tapping on his chest with the antenna of my radio, and I've got the thing keyed open, and I just said, I am the track vet. It is my decision to make. That horse is not sound. I am not going to have him break down and people die on my watch. And if you don't like it, I will go get in my car. I will go home, and you will have no more races for the rest of the day. And he wasn't too having some 5'10" redhead female veterinarian coming back at him, because he was the owner of the track. Everybody pretty much kowtowed to him. And I did not know that the stewards could make it from way up on top of the grandstand all the way to the paddock so fast. Just separate them out. And they just said, she's right. And so sorry. Because, you scratch a horse like that, everybody who's bet, then they get their money back. And, it's a lot of money. But so it was just one of those,
wow.
Afterwards, and at that track, for the track vet, one of the few perks. I mean, it's, but we got to have, we could eat lunch in the jockey's room, which was right off the paddock. So they had a little, lunch thing there. And the jockey who was supposed to ride that horse came over to me and just said, thank you, Doc. And I just said, not a problem. I don't want to scrape you up off of the racetrack. So, it was just one of those, it's my decision. It could have been just as easy. And then, horse goes out and snaps his leg off. And, and back in those days, it's not the racing that is today. And, it does happen, but you don't have to be sending horses out that, you just know shouldn't be there. So it was one of those, I don't need the job. Fire me. Go ahead. I dare you.
Right. And that's amazing, because that's another unseen thing. I like, Guy, that something, ma'am, we always pick out our unseen elements that we hear from our stories from those of you who we have on the podcast, and something, who else our decisions impacts. That's something that's unseen that you didn't realize, I'm sure you did realize that, your decision impacts so many people, but to hear that from the jockey, that gratefulness, and then also from those people that you mentioned that came up from above, like all these people were like, thank you, that finally someone stands up to him and is doing what's right. And that's what's better for everyone.
Well, it's credibility with the jockeys. And it was very much the same when I was in command. And you go into situations, my people knew that, if I ever just went, you come here, they better just put their head down, come in.
I've been that person before, ma'am, with you. And yes, I know.
But, there's no marks. but if anybody else tries to reach in and mess with my people, they know it ain't going to happen,
right.
So and so it's establishing that credibility. So just like on the racetrack, the jockeys knew that if they had a horse that was bad, they didn't want to get, it's a very political situation, but they knew if they could clue me in, and sometimes it's kind of okay, look at this one. They don't want to die, but they have to put on a show that, you scratched them off the horse. But if they take a tumble, they might be paralyzed. They might be dead. So, the same with military folks. When I hear people say, acceptable losses, or commanders who are really not attached to their people, and some Army. If you know me, I'm not a real big fan of Army culture. We need the Army. Somebody's got to do it. Thank you. Glad it wasn't me. But the Army moves the officers around so fast and so frequently. Personally, I think it's so you don't get attached to your people. I get very attached to my people. They're mine. When the time comes, and I told my folks, I said, and they all figured out who I was in my background. I said, I'm going to treat you all like a bunch of racehorses. I'm going to train you. I'm going to take care of you. I'm going to feed you. I'm going to put you in where you belong. And when I ask you, I want it all. I want it all. And they would, but they knew then, scrape you back up,
that you take care of them. That is so powerful.
But there's a time as have G series orders, there is a time that you have the authority, and to accomplish your mission, there's times you got to say to your people, okay, this is it. Game's on. Saddle up. Here we go. And and that's the burden. But I don't do that lightly. But it's not one of these. Oh, it's just Joe Soldier. These are my people. They're mine. So, yeah, it's.
I do think there is. I definitely do think there is that distinction across the different branches, right? And I would probably draw this parallel, right? It's a lot of times those leaders, when we're whatever that group is, we're close into, right?
Yeah.
Like if I just have a squad or platoon or whatever, those are the people that I want to I want them to perform their best, but I also want to take care of them. And it's interesting you say that about the Army, because doctrinally speaking, there are some percentages that, so like if you have to do a deliberate breach with engineers and you're covering it, with infantry and a multitude of other things, it's acceptable losses for 70+%. And I think about, just like all the decision makers who had to crunch all the numbers and math for, say, for example, D-Day, right? Like that would have been horrific, right? And then you think on the flip side about the close-in leaders who were standing there with their squads and platoons getting ready to get out of those boats and charge on that beachhead. Yeah. And I do think it's interesting, right? So it's leadership from different perspectives for the same situation. And I think it's cool, the owner of that racetrack in Arizona was looking from the business, the ownership perspective. You were looking from health, safety, and honestly, probably not wanting to make the news in a bad way. Because, that horse goes down, that jockey gets paralyzed, or worse yet, dies. Like those are all like Ashley said, right? Our decisions have effects that trickle out across the way. And I think it's neat how you have kind of taken a path where, in the military, you were very high up there, right? When we talk, like I said at the beginning of the podcast, when we talk full bird colonel up at some of the high staff levels, you're looking out across the whole organization, right? You're like a senior executive, like chief operations officer, things of that nature in corporate America. And then when you're the vet at the racetrack, you're right there. You said you're eating with the jockeys. You're very close knit with the animals and the racers who are actually going to charge onto that, that racetrack, that battlefield, if you will. Yeah. And I think that's cool that you've been able to kind of lead through both sides of that equation, and both sides, Connie is Connie, right? Like you're able to show up, you're able to express in your words exactly who you are, and you're able to hold your ground. And I think that's really cool. I think throughout the entire vet culture, and Ashley, this is something I'll throw your direction. I think there is a lot of, moral injury, which I don't think Connie, you had, right? And I think there's a lot of vets that with that moral injury that has led to the severe depression, and that has led to the high suicide rate that we have currently, right? And I know, Ashley, I'm kicking it over to you because I know you do quite a bit of work with, suicide prevention and stuff like that. I don't know, what are your thoughts on that?
I think it goes back to a lot of what Connie talked about with her leadership style of having to have faith in the decisions you're making. And sometimes those decisions are hard. And, when we talk about acceptable losses, we're talking about people who will lose their lives. That is such a huge, I give it up to you officers who had to make decisions like that. Like that's just something, those unseen elements that, people don't, when we talk about the sacrifice that people make in the military, we don't think about it's someone losing their lives, a family losing their family member, a person on earth, their life is ending. And these are like major things that officers have to decide. That's why y'all make the big bucks, and so when we talk about moral injury, I think that's where it comes down to, because we're taught in our everyday lives as human beings, thou shalt not kill and thou shalt do the right thing. But then in the military, we have this switch where sometimes we have to do these things. We have to take lives, or we have to accept that lives are lost. And so that's where that moral compass is just, it's fighting with each other. And I do know that plays such a major role. But I love that. But when you stand firm to your decisions and that you're doing what's right, based on, the mission, and as long as you're staying true with taking care of your people and you're doing the best you can. And I think it's that confidence thing. And that's what's amazing, is the confidence.
The big difference and sorry, I laughed earlier, doing it for the big bucks. One,
well, a lot bigger than us enlisted people, ma'am.
On the racetrack, one set of x-rays would take care of what I made in a drill weekend. So,
oh, wow.
The money ain't it. It's, it's doing something that's worthwhile. But so if your people are going to follow you, are they going to follow you out of fear, or are they going to follow you because they know, that, here we are, we're in the profession of arms. So the likelihood that, the big day's going to come, that's got a lot of inherent danger to it. What did you not understand? It's not just a cool outfit, but
right.
If your troops know that you don't make a decision until you have worked every trap that you can and done all you can to see to it that they're prepared, trained, and equipped. They know what you expect, that you're going to do all you can, but the time will come, as opposed to, and this is where looking horizontally, or sometimes, when you get a little higher up, start looking down. I've seen to it that a few people's careers came to screeching pauses, but you also get the ones who they're all about getting their next promotion. So whoever says, do this thing, here's this crap mission, and they just say, yay, barely 3 bags full, but then just make their people do it, but haven't taken care of their people, haven't prepared them, and those are the officers that, let's see, the Vietnam term was getting fragged. I heard of one that he actually had to have a security detail from his own people. Is this the guy you want to go to war with? So, if we have to go to war as an officer, this is a dangerous business. The likelihood I'm going to have to ask or tell, we don't practice democracy. We protect it. But still, have I done everything I can? Have I worked my subordinate officers? Who's doing what? Because, as you work your way up, there are times after action sessions can be excruciating, Also, when you have the honor and privilege of getting complained against, an IG comes in and says, okay, Colonel, what made you think this is such a good idea? Well, here's the decisions made, blah, blah, blah. How did we get here? But if it's just, I just felt like doing it, or my boss told me, and, I'm up for a promotion, so I did it,
no leg to stand on there.
So, and not only do you have to answer to your people, but you got to answer to God.
Amen. Yeah. And that's where we tie into, having faith and knowing that you're doing the right thing for the right reasons as best you can.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think another key thing you said earlier, right? Like, don't measure the leader, the individual, off of, am I male, female, whatever. Measure them off their performance. Like how are they performing? How are they doing? There were several times in my career where I can tell you I had much better relationships with my NCOs than I did with some of my senior officers. And, it's because I didn't agree with some of the orders and decisions that were being made, and I made sure I made myself known. It doesn't mean at the end of the day I didn't have to go do it, because, like you said, we protect democracy. We don't practice democracy. It just means that, again, like you said, have I looked at all the angles? Have I thought of all the possibilities? And is my unit, is my group, my team that's going to go do this thing, are we as prepared as we can be so that we can have potentially the best outcome possible?
Right.
And I think the answer is yes. And I don't want everyone listening to the podcast to think that there's huge issues across military leadership. I don't think that is what we want everyone to take away, right?
Yeah.
And I would also say, like, yeah, sometimes there are bad leaders, and whether it comes from top down, their careers end, or whether it comes from bottom up. I was a company commander, and I got a major who was our executive officer in the battalion fired, kicked out of the Army. So it can go both directions, right? But what made sure that my side of the story was heard was exactly what Connie was saying, right? Like, I'm doing the right things. I'm not compromising my morals, my values, my integrities. And when, and honest to goodness, when the brigade sergeant major came down and the brigade commander came down to do a sensing session with the senior NCOs, non-commissioned officers, and officers, all the non-commissioned officers, the brigade sergeant major said, "Hey, this captain put in this complaint about this major. Anyone want to speak up?" And I don't know everything that was said in that room, but I know they were in that room for about 3 hours. Mm-hmm. And so I know that all my NCOs backed me. Well, I do know that.
And, I don't want to take away, it took a lot of courage because, sometimes people do reprise against complainers. But yes, you did the right thing, but that you didn't get him fired. He got himself fired.
Amen.
Correct. Yeah. Correct.
One of the things that, every now and then kind of the self, the self pat on the head. I had another time, and, granted, when we're in war, bad stuff is happening, but when you are in an exercise situation, but we're exercising and we're doing things like, let's go put on some mop gear and carry patients in the summer in San Antonio, Texas.
The good idea, Ferry.
And
with the heat cat already way past.
Those good ideas.
The Air Force shows up and we say, "Okay, guys, get up. Is 2:00. We're going to start exercise at 3 so we can do all of this and be done by 6. And the Army planners we're dealing with are going, yeah, sounds good. Well, the Army 06 shows up, and oh no, he's got to have his breakfast, and then his and his club and his LMNOP. And so by the time he's okay, let's do the exercise. It's been in black conditions now for 3 hours. It's 120 degrees, and we're supposed to do this joint exercise. And my guys are wearing the most mop gear, and they're a bunch of little skinny medics. They're not a bunch of big beef. We got the big brains. And
nice. I like that.
This guy had me by data rank, which to the Army, that means some Air Force is just like, us colonels can go, we can go duke it out in private, or we can do it right here. And he wanted right here because he thought he would show everybody that, he was boss. Really? As I said, really? And so he said, "We're going to start the exercise now." I said, "No, you're not." And he said, and so here's his command sergeant major. I got my chief. We got our, everybody's and I just said, "No, we were all set as we agreed to. And in our plan, we were all set. You missed it. Right now, I am not going to put my people into that gear because, if I lose my people, that is it, period. And his answer was, "We don't stop an exercise until we've sent at least 3 to the emergency room." And I said, "Well, I said, "Well," and I called him by his first name right there in front of everybody, which he didn't like, but oh well. And I just said, "Just so you know, I am your senior medical officer. And oh, by the way, just because I wear a blue uniform doesn't mean I don't know how to read Army regs. And so I am your senior medical officer, and I am telling you in an exercise situation, this is unsafe. This is going to stop now. I will see you tomorrow morning at 3:00.
Yes.
And he just and turned on his heel and walked away. And his command sergeant major, who's supposed to, be right behind him, he kind of about a half step behind. And as he walked past me, he said, "Thank you, ma'am."
Because you're doing what's right. It's having that confidence. Yeah. That's what I keep hearing.
Well, and it had been the end of my career. I mean, I didn't have to, I knew what would happen to me. And just, no, I mean, but here's all these Army guys, and they're just going, "Oh, I don't want to do it." Just, nope.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
Sure.
So, ma'am, okay, so let's fast forward with your incredible early life that you got into veterinarian and then equine veterinary work and then with race horses and then got the wild hair up your butt to join the Air Force, which is incredible, and to have that amazing career. And so tell us about your life transitioning once you retired and, you know, then earning your retiree status and leading into how we got so lucky when you joined Operation Red Wings Foundation.
When I retired out in 2014, they kicked me out for old age. I was TDY when I got my congratulations on your retirement. I'm like, what?
What?
Nice.
Bottom line, okay, we'll let you go until December, but get out. You know, so all right. At the time, I was the guard advisor to the commander of Air Force ISR agency. You know, so a whole bunch of guard units that a certain president a few ago who decided that a bunch of air guard units didn't need those pesky fighter jets, but instead of making the units go away because all the governors were going to eat his lunch, turned them all into either drones or ISR, so intelligence, surveillance, reconnaissance. So a bunch of guard units are fighting a war 24/7, you know, from Minot, North Dakota and Terre Haute, Indiana, and you name it. And, you know, these people, they call it death TV. You know, they're on Title 10 orders for a couple of years at a time. And granted, the people who go to war and deploy out to the desert, I don't want to take a thing away from them because, you know, there's not many live bullets shooting at you unless you're in a unit in Houston. And then, but the other side of the coin is when you guys are at war, you're at war. And when you come home, you're home. Well, these people, they're on night shift because what time is it here when it's war over there? And they're talking real time to the guys on the ground. You know, so the ISR, they've been doing surveillance on Abu bin Bad Guy. Okay, don't go in that door, go in this one. They're listening in as the battle is going on. It's not uncommon. They're listening in, casualties occur. And so these guys, the PTS and the moral injury, and, you know, granted, they're sitting in an air-conditioned skiff in Terre Haute, Indiana, but they're 2 days on, 3 days off, 3 days on, 2 days off. They come out, they go home, and the spousal unit says, here, you know, you got the kids, the refrigerator's broken, I'm going to work. The circadian rhythm is just completely out of whack. So these guys, it's a couple of Benadryl and a little Jack Daniels and try to pass out. And so after a couple of years, this, you know, divorce rate, suicide rate, you name it, has gotten off the charts. So, you know, I was very passionate about that, you know, and had been passionate about the PTS because, you know, coming up as the joint surgeon and before that as a medical commander, very aware as we're seeing people come back home. All this was very important. So boom, 2014, get out. All right, got it. Searched around, found that I had some GI Bill that I'd accumulated and decided, all right, I know I'm going to be working with nonprofits. There's a zillion of them. Some of them are really, really good, and some of them are absolute shams. So if I'm, you know, I'm not such a big name, but still, if I'm going to get involved, I want to get involved in one I feel good about. And so I used my GI Bill, went to Texas A&M Bush School of Public Service Nonprofit Management and got a graduate certificate there. And doing coursework, everybody else was already part of a nonprofit. So you have to write a marketing paper or a project management or whatever. I didn't have a nonprofit. And everybody, I talked to a number of people that I respected very highly. It looked like the right thing. I made contact with them and I said, you know, here's who I am. Here's what I'm doing. I have to write papers. So all I'm asking of you is just, you know, can I have a couple of phone calls or come down to visit? And they said, as long as we get to see the papers. I said, sure, I don't care. And so got to know them, got to know Terry Young, got to know Dale Underland, got to know a bunch of the folks. Basically, like anything else in my life, I just wore them down.
I'm not leaving till you give me something to do.
Well, they finally put me on the board because, you know, the board are a bunch of great people and, you know, very dedicated to the mission, and the mission is solid, you know.
So solid.
You know, so as far as the economics go, it's a very, very well-run organization, but I loved what the mission was doing and I loved the outcomes that we were getting. And so they didn't have a veteran on the board and they didn't have a woman. Bada boom, bada bing, 2 for 1. So they let me come on, and, you know, I don't come in with the big bucks from some corporate job or a personal family fortune. And I did warn them, and they knew ahead of time I do come in with a lot of opinions. If you don't like those, I have more. But I help where I can, and it goes back to that. Having been a senior officer, I'm fearless. As long as I'm not committing any crimes, who do you want me to talk to?
The confidence, ma'am, the confidence level you have, it's so inspiring. It just, I'm like,
wait a minute, hold a gun to my head. I'm coming in. You say yes or you say no. Okay, fine. Thanks for your time.
Well, and you bring up a really interesting perspective, right? So like in the command where you were over ISR, right? A lot of PTS there. And for listeners who aren't familiar, so post-traumatic stress, right? This can be from, these individuals were watching humans die or potentially even releasing munitions, right? And even though they were doing it through orders, they were still the ones either watching it or hitting the button to release the munition, right?
Well, and they're talking to the guys on the ground.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, for sure. For sure.
Getting hit.
Yep. Absolutely. Absolutely. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Big fan of the Air Force from being a guy on the ground.
Warheads on. We like those.
Yeah, for sure. And I think it's just, I think you brought to light something that, so I've been both, right? I've been on the ground, engaged in direct combat, shot at, engaged. I've also been in a command center where I worked. My counterpart was a non-commissioned officer from the Air Force because we were working with the birds in the air. And we were calling in strikes and releasing munitions. So, however, when I ended my day's work, I went either to the chow hall or the gym or back to my bunk to grab a quick nap. I wasn't stepping from outside a war zone to family life immediately.
Right. And
that's a really interesting dynamic and perspective. And it's really cool that you bring it over to ORW Foundation, right? So for our listeners who aren't super familiar with ORW Foundation, after you reach down there, hit the like and subscribe, go to our website, check us out. It's open for all veterans, whether you have PTS from going to combat, whether you are a survivor of any kind of sexual trauma. Our doors are open, right? Come to our retreats. We even have retreats for spouses, couples, families.
Oh, yeah. And they're led by incredible people. We have a team leader here with us, and we have our board member. And I love, ma'am, you are our second board member to have on. We had Tony Panettiere, our newest board member. Yeah. And I think it's so great for our listeners, Guy, to not only hear, the great work that we do with the foundation, but these are real people, real veterans, real combat tested, leaders who believe in our mission of what we're doing. I just think it's incredible.
Yeah. And when you think about, right, so you think about that transition, right? Individuals come out of service, they say, okay, what's next? Maybe go grab a civilian career, maybe not, maybe they're too stuck in some of the trauma from their service or even earlier in life, right? Like, as I think about some of the parallels that Connie was talking about, Ashley, it's really interesting to me because people who show up to retreats, right? And you know this as well as I do, they show up and within minutes, it's like we've all known each other for years.
And a sigh of relief too. Like,
and a sigh of relief. Yeah.
I'm with my people.
Here's a group of people who understand me. Mm-hmm. So Connie, I think it's cool that you bring that perspective of having, even though it was individuals who were on, so Title 10 is active duty service orders. So they were, for all in essence, they were active duty, right? Just through a reserve or guard component. But that problem set, right? Just thinking about that. And this is my question as I kind of slowly get to it. Like taking in that problem set where you have individuals who by night are running ops, supporting ops, right? Direct action. Enemies are dying. Sometimes friendlies are dying. And then they're having to go back to civilian life. Did that help you bring some of those thoughts, some of those ideas to the table with now ORW Foundation that, maybe we've put them into practice, maybe we haven't yet, but I'm just curious because that's a really unique perspective. And I think that's really cool the way you explained it.
Well, one of the things when earlier on, Lone Survivor Foundation, it was focused on combat vets. And, the ISR folks, there were one or two that came in, and the combat vets, we try at the retreats to have people as alike as possible. Sometimes you'll get kind of a mixed bag, and then that's its own dynamic because everybody's still a veteran. But we try to have that. And the guys that had been, kicking down doors and, going out in full battle rattle, and then here's the Air Force person, with, kind of the dark room pale and no calluses on their hands, somehow didn't fit in. But, nonetheless, their trauma and, just the wearing down in the moral industry. And the other part is, when guys are like I said, when you're at war, there's no doubt about it. You walk outside your hooch, you're still at war. With these folks, having that come and go, but also because they operate in that super top secret environment. I mean, people's lives are in their hands. And, as a commander, we call the person the SSO. So this is the person, the security clearance gatekeeper Nazi, which, I want a Nazi in that job. But also it had gotten so bad that as these people, here they're dealing with, they're in there, it's death TV. Here's this big operation. Maybe somebody that they've been talking to for a month died and they listened to the whole thing. And the SSO would say, you cannot say anything. So you go home, go to the spouse. I mean
holding it all in.
Here it is. The SSO would say, you cannot even say that you had a bad day. And then National Guard put mental health professionals in all of the wings, and this has been going on for a long time. But the SSO said, if you even walk down the hallway where that mental health professional is, and all that person is really not your therapist, but they're your resource to everybody else. They said, if you even walk down that hallway, you lose your clearance.
Yeah.
After these people have been doing this job, whatever their civilian job was, and we like to say in the Guard and Reserve, you come, you go to war, you come home, you go back into your job. Oh, after the war's been going on for how long, that job is gone. And so here they're on Title 10. The family's got insurance. They're making good money. At least they're not getting shot at unless they're living in Houston. But they cannot get any mental health because they're not even allowed to say
what they did at all, anything.
They're on Title 10 orders in Terre Haute, Indiana, Minot, North Dakota, wherever. And there's no Title 10 physician, because big Air Force. So, well, they just go to the local Air Force base. Really? So you get
really,
they got a problem, and you drive to San Antonio, sit in line, and then something happens. No. So, fearless colonel, and I can't say I was the sole one that made it happen, but I sure let people know I was there. pounded on plenty of 2- and 3-star desks. But we have got to support these people. They need to, where in the envelope, they ought to at least be able to come home and say, honey, I have had a really, really bad day.
Amen. Your support network.
Yeah, because otherwise it's just like we see with our couples. Here you have the veteran and they got all this going on in their head. And just when it gets the worst, then the spouse wants to come in here. Let me love on you. Let's talk about it. And that's the last thing they want. And then the spouse is like, well, if you don't want me, then maybe I don't belong here. And the next thing you know, the wheels come off. And then, so it's same. And so this ain't rocket science. Let's take care of our people. Let's connect the dots. I can't change the fact that circadian rhythms are an issue. 2 days on, 2 days off, 3 days on, 3 days off. What time is it? What time zone am I in? And this goes on for years and years and years. I don't have a good answer for that. But at the very least, where's the support? What can our people be able to say to their spouses? What are we doing for the spouses? So at least, come up with a code word, rosebud. Means I love you, go away.
Right.
Love you, go something. So I think this is where Operation Red Wing Foundation can be so valuable, because the divorce rate 9 times what the rest of the National Guard, Air Guard had for the people in ISR and in drones. The suicide rate out of this world. One occasion, a guy who's a chief. I mean, he'd been in a state that he'd worked on, he'd been a crew chief, worked his way up, was the command chief at the wing, but he's working the ISR mission. And so this guy is true blue. He's been wearing a uniform for 34 years, but now he's trying to pull these same shifts because, they got a mission to do and they're in the fight. And one day he's driving home, and the next thing he knows, he wakes up and he's in his car in the ditch, and he's looking down the barrel of a gun at the local sheriff. He fell asleep at the wheel, clipped the sheriff's car, and that dumped him in the ditch. The sheriff figures this guy is looking to attack him. He gets out, already drawn, and now he opens the window and he's looking at a guy with, a sleeve full of stripes and just going, holy crap. But, this guy's a true blue, work as hard as he can, taking care of his people, but also taking his turn in the barrel, doing the mission because the mission has to happen. And, got news for you. Biology gets you. And he fell asleep. So here it is. Are things as bad? No. Are they getting better? I hope so. Back when I was doing that, like I said, I'm a very senior colonel, and what I got to lose? What are you going to do to me? Send me back to Texas? But if I go up, I've got enough top cover, and I've got a great governor, and he's backing me up. And so I could go pound on the desk. But, what are we going to do about this? And, and my fellow guardsmen say, Connie, you're a guardsman's guardsman, but, they'll listen to you. And I said, well, if not, I'll just camp outside their office. I'm TDY as long as I can.
That confidence, and I love that. And my final unseen element I picked out here of what we were talking about is even after 2 amazing careers, ma'am, you still got you retired and went back to school and said, what else can I do? And I love that. We never know what our future is going to look like.
Well, and, things go full circle. I'm the vice chair for the Texas Racing Commission. So as we are cleaning up, doing everything in racing and coming on, and I'm one of the few that has actually been a racetracker, and I'm a veterinarian and I practiced. So when people come up and they think that they can, tell us some story and somehow get off from a penalty or getting their license jerked, and they come and they appeal to who? Me. I'm just like, oh, please. No. I give points for being creative, but don't tell me things that I've said, so, but it's a neat thing. So I'm kind of back to saving the lives of the horses and the jockeys and doing what we can to make racing safe and make racing a good thing in Texas. So
incredible.
It goes in circles.
Yeah. I think my unseen element is just going to be that awareness to the mental health aspect. Really thinking about the dynamic of having to turn on and off the switch of I'm a war fighter and it's at a certain security clearance level. So then I have to go home and be, a father, a husband, or even just a normal American, right? And can't talk about anything that happened in this part of your day. That's so unnatural compared to, the social media world that we live in right now. And I will say not much better from my experiences in the Army side of the house. It was incredibly taboo to try to go talk to mental health. The first place I actually got to talk to a mental health provider was after a master sergeant walked me down a hallway and I didn't know who I was talking to. And it was at JSOC, Special Staff Annex. And she turned off her computer screen, put down her pen, and we just chatted. And none of that was ever on any kind of records or anything, because it's exactly what you said, right? That fear, that stigma of you're going to lose your job, you're out of the game, you can't go do all the incredible things you've been doing. And then, you transition, right? So you've retired, I've retired. And now it's like, okay, so where do I turn? Where can I get the resources now? And so that aspect of that mental health journey, right? If you're out there and you are a veteran, you are a spouse of a veteran, come to ORW Foundation, come to one of our retreats. We have individuals, we have spouse retreats specifically for the spouses who have never served. We have couples retreats. If you come to North Carolina, you're probably going to see me there. And we have family retreats, right? And the whole idea is when you show up to these retreats, like Ashley commented on earlier, you're gonna be like this, going to get on the airplane. And when you show up, as you start to talk to everyone, realize you're normal.
Yeah.
You've just had some really
magic,
messed up experiences, right? You're gonna go, right? Exactly like Connie was just doing, right? It's a breath of fresh air, right? And we have clinicians that are on staff and at our retreats because that is so important. And I can say, you know, Connie, I remember Lone Survivor Foundation as well. I started as an individual male team leader when it was still Lone Survivor Foundation. And I went through my individual male retreat out in Texas at the beach house when that was still a thing. Yeah. Then came on staff. And then, so I've been here through the transition. And now I pretty well just do couples retreats. And man, couples retreats are, if I can plug the retreat I love to work, they're powerful and they're incredible. And I would say some of the coolest work I've ever seen is that wall, Connie, that you've been talking about, where the service member couldn't come home and talk about anything. The service member oftentimes puts up this wall, and I'm going to speak for myself. I put up a wall thinking I was protecting my wife, Kelly. And the reality was, yeah, I might have been protecting her from my experiences. I was also blocking her out. And once you realize that and you can work with clinicians and you can get that wall down, there's that opportunity to connect and reconnect. And that's so important, right? So I think the perspective you brought in, Connie, today with talking about the individuals who had to shift back and forth between really not normal experiences, going home and I can't do what's socially normal, which is tell my spouse about my day or get on social media and be like, oh my gosh, this happened today. And that dynamic to, you know, retiring and now what? The now what is come to ORW Foundation. Yeah. So do us a favor, reach down there, hit the like and subscribe so you can catch all our podcasts. Hit our website so you can sign up for a retreat. They're free of cost to come to our retreats. I want to say awesome podcast. Wow. Thank you so much, Connie, for being on the podcast with us.
We told you we'd be easy on you.
Yeah. There were good stories.
Incredible stuff, ma'am.
Yeah, it was awesome. So on behalf of ORW Foundation, my co-host Ashley, our guest today, Connie, thank you all for joining us on the Unseen Journey. We hope to see you back soon and take care.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.